What's going on, everyone? John here, the Wolf of Ecom, coming to you for another video, and I'm going to talk about credit today with you, baby. What we want to get across the table today is, first of all, how credit works, how to build it, how to maybe even improve it, okay? Because this really has a large impact on your life. You know, I'm in the process of starting to look at purchasing a home, and I'm seeing how much this plays into it. Now, thankfully, you're actually going to see my credit score. It wasn't always as good as it looks right now, but that is a large part, right? So we'll talk about that in a minute, but you know, just having a low credit score can either disqualify you or just set you up with a extremely high unfavorable rate. All right, so let's talk about what actually influences your credit, right? Because, well, first of all, why does it matter? Home and auto loans, okay? So the rate that you're going to be given, if you're even approved at all, that's a big part of it. The next thing is qualifying for additional credit, right? So let's say you're going through a rough patch or there's a pandemic that hits, and just having extra credit available is definitely going to help you get through rough spots. If maybe you burn through your savings from some medical bills and you lose your job on top of that, right? So those are real life things that can happen, and having credit can save your butt sometimes. Or let's say you want to start an e-commerce business, which is what I'm all about, and you should definitely check out our course in the link in the description. Make sure to hit that right after you click and smash the like button, and of course subscribe. But what I want to say is, if you are starting another business, having the ability to get access to something such as like an American Express charge card, which I talked about in one of our other videos, the best credit cards that you'll want to have today for points benefits and other things, having access to something like that will help you when it comes to having money available and not having to go get a credit line or a loan. You know, having a American Express charge card, for example, the spend limit will increase the more history you build with it, right? So it's not even a spend limit, it's a charge card. So you got to pay it off every month, but you go up to, you know, my American Express lets me go up to $150,000 at once in charges. So just having something like that can make your life easier. I don't need to go find a bunch of cash if I get into a bad spot. I can just front it on my Amex, and then, you know, I'll find the money or produce it from additional sales. Now, talking about starting business, maybe you do want to get a loan or a credit line. Well, you'll need good credit for that. So those things will have an impact on if you get approved or not, right? And then even sometimes, you know, depending on the job you're applying for, let's say you're a W-2 employee, ain't nothing wrong with that. Trust me, I was an employee once in my life. It's been a nice 10 years since. And what you will need to be aware of is some employers, depending on what line of work you're in, will require you to do a background check. They're not gonna necessarily look at your credit score, but they will look at a credit report. So if you don't take care of your credit and manage it well, some things are gonna show up that maybe could disqualify you from future employment, right? So just keep that in mind. So let's talk about, you know, the two circumstances you're in. Probably you're either you don't have very good credit, or you have limited credit, or none at all, right? So what do you do? Where do you start? How do you A, improve it, and B, establish it? Well, the cool thing is the two kind of go hand in hand. So by doing, whether you're in one of those two situations, there's only a few differences, but ultimately the same actions are going to build, establish, and also improve credit. So let's talk about those, okay? And just real quick, I'm going to open up my screen here. All right, so when it comes to free credit reporting, you know, services, so never ever pay for someone to tell you your credit score. There's all sorts of websites like the two I have here. So I use a combination of Credit Karma, which has done a recent update. I just went up 6 points at 767. Let's go. And then also Mint, right? So Mint, I'm still lagging a little bit, but it's about a week and a half behind the update. Dropped in points there for some reason, but it'll match my beautiful Credit Karma score here shortly. And to be fair, this wasn't always like this. You know, my credit was very bad just about 3 years ago. I went through a time period of my life where I made some very bad decisions and mismanaged my finances about 5-6 years ago, and that really caught up to me, and that showed my credit score. I had I didn't default on my credit cards, but what I did is I transferred them into a service that, I forget the technical terms of it, but they consolidated all my debt. They negotiated with my creditors, all the entities that I had credit with, and they basically negotiated a cheaper rate but a guaranteed payment plan. So that dropped my credit. I had no credit cards in my name. So I hope that honest story inspires you to have some hope that you can A, have a great credit score like this, and B, if you're starting from scratch, the world ain't over. You'll be perfectly fine. But I show you this just to not only tell that story because I think it's pretty inspiring and cool, but also show you how this stuff works, right? So it'll actually break down, if I click on one of these, and there are two separate reporting agencies, TransUnion and Equifax. Let's look at TransUnion real quick. So credit score going up, well, let's go. Now, the couple things that are going to impact your credit score, right? And I'm gonna break these down by percentages in a second. First of all, it's gonna be your ability to pay. And it's gonna have a larger percentage of impact on your actual credit score, right? So if we talk about percentages, okay, but it's going to have a sizable impact. We'll talk percentages in a second. The next is going to be the age of your credit. So like, I wasn't lying when I told you 5 to 6 years ago I really screwed up. I had to close on my credit cards. I just started rebuilding almost 3 years ago, right? So credit age is pretty low for me, but nonetheless, I still have a great credit score. Total accounts, this will have a big impact too. And then hard inquiries, such as this can be someone, you know, inquiring about an auto loan, about a home loan, maybe additional credit card lines, right? So it could be a number of things, but those are going to be harder inquiries versus a soft inquiry is just pulling your credit score just to see it, or pre-qualifying with certain credit cards, not actually getting approved per se. And then of course, derogatory marks, any kind of bankruptcies or liens, or if you've been sending collections, all those things have a really negative impact, okay? And then one of the most important things is gonna be the credit card usage, the amount of debt you're carrying month to month. And most importantly with this is the relative percentage, the debt utilization. So if you have $100 of available credit and you use $50 every month and maintain a $50 balance, you're using 50% of your credit. Not good. You want this to be like 10%. So if you have $100,000, that would be $10,000. Assuming I'm doing math right, which I definitely am, just thought about that one. So we'll go over these as specific examples in a second, but you can basically see the same thing here. And I recommend both of these. They work great. If you use Mint, at one point I used to use it for my personal finances. I don't anymore, but this is another great service as well, right? So going back to talking about the actual breakdowns of these credit percentages, right? So what actually impacts the percentage? So first of all, 15% of your credit score is going to be dependent on the length of the history. So you can see that even having a shorter length, like myself, I'm barely pushing 3 years since I had that restart, does not prevent me from having a high credit score. Okay, I'm definitely on the upper end, getting close to that beautiful 800 mark. Everyone is motivated to get to for some stupid reason. The next thing is going to be the payment history, right? So if you've had late payments, this is definitely going to have a major impact. So pay your stuff on time, very simple. It's going to be about 35% of your credit score. And also, this, from my understanding, the length of history is actually an average length of history, right? So the more credit lines you open, it almost penalizes you, okay? So it's gonna bring your average length of time having that credit line, that credit card, that loan alive, right? So that's going to drop it's gonna drop your average, right? If you open 10 new lines today, your average time of having those lines is gonna go down, which is gonna have a negative impact on your score. All right, the amount of debt utilization, right? So I gave this example of $100. I have $50 maintained as a balance every single month. I'm using 50%, so keep it about 10%. Opening new 10% will be new credit lines. So actually like inquiries. So like we talked about, maybe hard inquiries, okay? So it's gonna have about a 10% impact on the total score. And then the last 10% is going to be having a mix or variety. So if you only have a bunch of credit cards, it's not going to help your score as much as having an auto loan, a home loan, maybe a business loan, and then also a couple credit cards, all right? So I kind of touched on this already, but just to go back in my notes here, the thing you have to be aware of are what hurts your credit score, right? So obviously limited history or not having any history, okay? That is definitely gonna hurt you, okay? We'll talk about strategies to combat this in a second. Late payments, using a high percentage of your credit available, right? So if all your if you have 10 credit cards, they have $1,000 in credit card each, your total amount of credit available is $10,000. And once again, you have maybe 50%, so $5,000 out of your $10,000 is being used. That's gonna hurt you, okay? And then the hard credit inquiries, like we mentioned, with applying for new cars, applying for homes or home loans, and then also additional credit cards. And then not having enough variety or lack of variety in the types of credits, credit lines or credit available for yourself. And then also if you ever have gone bankrupt or had a foreclosure, that's gonna definitely be carried for a long time, okay? Now let's talk about tips to increase your credit and build credit if you're just starting out. So just to backtrack for a second, if you do not have any kind of credit history, what I recommend you do is if you have a trusted cosigner, maybe a spouse, a parent, a sibling, a relative, someone that can trust you, having them put you on a credit card that they're already spending money on regularly, maybe not giving you the card yourself, you will basically reap the benefits of their score, assuming they have a good one and they're doing the things we're talking about. All right, so that's a very easy one. That's why a lot of parents will get their credit card with their kid's name to help them build credit, so they have like 800 score by the time they get out of high school, which is pretty nuts. I wish I had that. The second thing is going to be if you don't have someone in your life that can help you establish credit, you can go to a top tier bank such as like PNC, Wells Fargo, and set up what's called a secured credit card, right? So if you have any kind of assets, you own a home, you have equity in a car, you can leverage that to establish a credit line. I'm not positive about the car, just was thinking out loud there, okay? But definitely if you have any hard assets that you could leverage is a way of establishing credit, that'll work. Or you get what's called a secured credit card, where you put cash down. So maybe you put down $1,000 and that's your credit limit. So if you screw up, they're just gonna take your money and obviously charge you interest too. So that's a really good way to establish credit. Not sure about the interest, just thinking out loud again. But that's a really easy way to get started. And if you manage that well and treat it just like any other credit card, you will build credit from that. Obviously, having bills in your name, having a lease in your name, all those other little things that if you're adulting like me, kind of, you know, I am most of the time, I'm still a big kid most of the time too, you will definitely want to be benefiting from just paying your bills and living your life and doing it responsibly like an adult, right? Now, the second thing is having a variety. So if you only have credit cards right now, maybe if you're looking to purchase that first car or that first home, maybe act on that sooner than later. There are a variety of kinds of credit. If you're in business already, maybe go get a business credit line. That's going to add more variety to the types of credit you have, okay? Maybe even a charge card, right, for your business, okay? And then tip number 3 is going to be, and by the way, to go back to tip number 1 about establishing credit, that's obviously only if you don't have credit, okay? Now, credit utilization, this is a hack that I really like. I like the hacks. They're always fun to talk about, to listen to, okay? This is going to be if you already have a couple credit lines open, right? So let's say you have like 3 to 5 credit cards and they're each already approved for $1,000 a month in credit, okay, and you're regularly paying them on time, there's no issues, there's no late payments, you can, after some time, after some history, a couple months, maybe a year, 6 to 12 months, I'd recommend. I'm not an expert in this, but I would say probably 6 to 12 months in, if you have regular history, you're paying on time, you're using it responsibly, most of them you could log in on the online portal and just hit request increase, right? Because think about it, if you have 5 credit cards, $1,000 in credit available already, and you're responsibly using it, and you have history, and you do an increase, you request an increase, it's not going to be a hard hit on your credit score, right? And let's say you get approved for another $1,000, so your available credit with the same 5 credit cards doubles to $2,000. That gives you $10,000 in available total credit. What does that mean? Well, that means if you had a $1,000 balance on the $5,000, that's 20%, right? That's more than you ideally want. Now that you've doubled and you've gone up to $10,000 in available credit, you have now effectively made that $1,000 balance across your credit cards a 10% credit utilization. So that will look better to the credit reporting agencies. They're going to be like, oh, this guy or gal or person is using a smaller percentage of their credit now, right? They're not going to give weights to the fact that you had an increase in available credit with existing credit lines. Super cool. So I did that recently. I got approved for every single credit line increase. So I had like 9 credit lines, just like 2 to 3x, and my available credit shrunk, okay? And that's probably a large part of why you see my credit credit score consistently going up when we look at the chart, right? Next would be obviously just making your payments on time. That's a no-brainer. You should be doing that anyway. You should have been doing that before you watch this video. And then, like I talked about, establishing a joint account if you need that leverage from someone else that you trust, that trusts you, just to at least put your name on the account that they're already using. Okay, that will make a difference. So those are my main tips. You know, there's a lot of other things we could talk about too, right? So like if, let's say you have derogatory marks, or you have something that's been sent to collections that's hurting your credit, okay? Reaching out to those collection agencies isn't always gonna be a good use of your time. Most of the time they won't work with you. They'll make you feel like you just need to pay it, but you can fight those in some cases. We'll talk about that in another video. Not always guaranteed you're gonna get it removed. Sometimes it's just there and there's not a whole lot you can do about it, but time will benefit you to this. So if you're doing your due diligence right now, if you're taking advantage of all these steps that we talked about, I can guarantee you 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 2 years from now, your credit score can look exactly like what mine showed if you have no credit or if you're just trying to build your credit back up, okay? So use all those tips, and as always, if you're looking for another way to make money, if you're looking for another income stream, this is mainly a channel about not just personal finance, personal development, but specifically e-commerce. We are the e-commerce wolves, so make sure to check out our course in the link to the description of this video and check that out. You will absolutely not regret it. If you're thinking about starting an online business, you want that freedom, that flexibility in these uncertain times, you absolutely want to check out what we have to offer there, all right? And I'll see you in the next video.